I always thought that my marriage to Sam was something solid, unshakable. We knew each other too well, lived side by side for many years. But over time, something changed. Our conversations became formal, full of predictability. It seemed like we were talking more out of habit than out of desire. Every day, like a carbon copy, repeated itself over and over. In the end, I started feeling like a prisoner within these walls, in these monotonous days. And then one day, in search of any distraction, I stumbled upon an online game. It was a simple open-world game where players could interact with each other, complete quests, and even make friends. I decided to give it a try even though I wasn't much of a gamer. Maybe it was my way of escaping, if not physically, then at least mentally. So I created a character, gave them a name, chose their appearance. I felt a bit silly at first, but as I immersed myself in the game's world, everything else seemed to fade away. I started completing quests, interacting with other players, and at some point he appeared on my path. Hunter. We started completing tasks together, talking about how to overcome challenges in the game. But soon, our conversations went beyond just game-related topics. He was mysterious. There was a confidence in his words that drew me in. I became curious about who he really was. I felt myself being pulled towards him, even though we barely knew each other. The game was gradually turning into my personal escape from reality. The time spent in the game had become more than just amusement. It became something greater, something I eagerly awaited every day. I no longer sought variety in my everyday life because it was here, in this virtual world. Hunter had become more than just a gaming partner to me. He was someone I could talk to about what troubled me deep inside. Our characters increasingly stayed alone together, and I began to feel that something more was igniting between us. His attention and words made me feel a passion I hadn't felt in a long time. We didn't just complete quests together, we pushed the boundaries of the game, using its features in ways I never even knew existed. His character could touch mine, and though it was only in the virtual world, I felt a spark ignite inside me. Every move he made was calculated, every word filled with depth. Our game was crossing boundaries. We spent time alone, talked about life, shared thoughts I hadn't even discussed with Sam in ages. Each day, our interactions grew more passionate. He hugged me in the game, his character was by my side, and it gave me a warmth I hadn't felt in so long. I felt alive. Sometimes, I caught myself anticipating our virtual meetings more than my evenings with Sam. With Hunter, I could be my true self, without hiding my feelings or fears. He had become the one I had been searching for all this time. The game was no longer just entertainment. It had become my way to escape from the emptiness that filled my real life. I couldn't believe how quickly things were escalating. Hunter had started flirting with me through the in-game chats. His messages became suggestions that we could slip away from the crowded virtual spaces and find a quiet place just for the two of us. At first, it seemed harmless, just playful words. But the more we talked, the more intimate our conversations became. He spoke of his fantasies, and to my surprise, I found myself responding in kind. We discussed dreams I had never allowed myself to imagine in real life. Hunter was free, unbound by any restrictions. His words stirred feelings in me that I thought had long disappeared. I felt like a woman again, desired, wanted by someone else. With Sam, that spark had faded long ago. Our relationship had become routine, so predictable that I could foresee every next step. But with Hunter, everything was unpredictable. Every time his message popped up on the screen, my heart would race. I wanted to know what he would write next. I felt excitement and passion, as if our virtual interactions were real. It was a strange sensation, realizing that pixels on a screen could evoke such strong emotions. But I couldn't deny it. These emotions were real to me. One day, as I stood in the shower, my thoughts drifted back to Hunter. The water flowed down my body, and I thought of his words. How he said he dreamed of seeing me even more closely in the game. Suddenly, I felt a shiver of excitement, an almost physical response to his flirtation. How long had it been since I had felt anything like that? I couldn't even remember. It both frightened and fascinated me. I realized that my relationship with Hunter had come to mean more to me than my relationship with Sam. With each passing day, I was drifting further from reality and diving deeper into this virtual world where only Hunter existed. Sam had always been a calm and composed person. He rarely questioned what I did in my free time. But lately, he seemed to have started noticing that I was spending too much time in the game. I couldn't tear myself away from the virtual world, from Hunter, from the emotions this world gave me. One evening, as I sat at the computer, completely absorbed in my passionate interactions with Hunter, Sam happened to walk by the room. I didn't notice his glance as he caught a glimpse of the screen. Hunter and I were alone, our characters in a secluded place, interacting on a level I had never thought possible in a game. It wasn't just about completing quests anymore. It was almost a real world for me. I hadn't thought about how it might look to someone else. When Sam saw this, he didn't say anything immediately, but I noticed the change in his expression. He didn't understand what was happening, but something clearly unsettled him. Maybe he thought it was just a game, but there was something in his face that told me he was bothered. Jealousy? Perhaps. It was strange because it was just a screen with pixels after all. After that, he started paying more attention to what I was doing when I sat at the computer. I could feel his gaze now and then, catching him glancing at me through the open door, checking what was on my screen, sometimes silently watching when I was deep in the game. His looks became more cautious. He was definitely starting to suspect something. I saw Sam becoming more withdrawn, though he didn't say anything outright. He tried to remain calm, but his thoughts must have been troubling him. He couldn't understand why I was so engrossed in this game. Perhaps it was just a sense of jealousy creeping in at the thought that someone else, even in a virtual world, was stirring such strong emotions in me. Sam began watching me more often. I could feel it. He didn't ask questions, but I knew his suspicions were growing. And while I kept telling myself that it was just a game, with no real-life consequences, deep down I knew it meant much more to me. And it seemed Sam could sense that too. Our conversations with Hunter had become more and more revealing. We started discussing not just what was happening in the game, but also the possibility of stepping outside the virtual world. One question kept popping up more and more frequently in our chats. What if we met in real life? The thought frightened me, but it also excited me, stirring feelings I hadn't experienced in a long time. One day, as we were flirting as usual through the chat, his message appeared on the screen. "Are you ready to meet me in the real world?" The words made me freeze. I didn't know what to say. A flood of thoughts rushed through my mind. It felt so risky, yet so tempting at the same time. My heart raced. Was I really ready for this? I hesitated for a long moment, but eventually typed back, "I'm not sure, but I can't stop thinking about it." Hunter responded quickly. "Then let's just meet. There's no need to rush anything, we can just talk in a relaxed atmosphere. I know a place, a restaurant with private rooms. We can talk there, no one will bother us." A part of me wanted to refuse, to say that this was wrong, but another braver part of me urged me forward. Meeting in real life. It could change everything. I felt excitement, anticipation, but also fear and unease. What if Sam found out? What if it turned out to be a mistake? Despite all the internal turmoil, I agreed. I knew I couldn't stop now. My desire to know Hunter beyond the game was stronger than my fear. We arranged to meet at the restaurant in a few days. The place was private enough that no one would disturb us. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. Thoughts of it kept swirling in my mind. What would Hunter say when he saw me? What would I say? But one thing I knew for sure, this meeting had to happen. I couldn't stop anymore. When I left the house to meet Hunter, I was filled with a mixture of excitement and nerves. I had carefully considered how I would look, what I would say. It all felt like a game, not just in the literal sense, but in the metaphorical one as well. I was playing with fire, with myself, not thinking about the consequences. But I was wrong to assume that Sam hadn't noticed anything. As time passed, Sam began to suspect something was off. I spent too much time in the game, often disappearing into my office for hours, and now I had left the house for several hours without much explanation. His patience had run out. He decided it was time to find out what was really going on. After I left, Sam sat down at my computer. He opened the game, checked my recent activity, and finally stumbled upon my chats with Hunter. The messages were so revealing that Sam instantly understood that this was more than just a game. His face paled as he read through the flirtatious and passionate conversations, feelings I hadn't expressed to him in a long time. The most devastating moment for Sam came when he saw the latest messages, where Hunter and I discussed meeting at the cafe. This was no longer virtual. It was becoming real. He couldn't believe this was truly happening. Overcome with rage, Sam couldn't wait. For him, this was betrayal, even if it hadn't reached the physical stage yet. Without hesitation, he threw on his clothes, grabbed his keys, and drove straight to the cafe. He didn't know exactly where we planned to meet inside the cafe, but he was determined to figure it out. When he arrived, Sam parked nearby and decided to wait outside. He had no idea where we might be within the cafe. It was a large place with multiple rooms and even private areas. So he stayed near the entrance waiting for the moment when I would show up. His heart was pounding, and a mix of betrayal and anger churned inside him. He couldn't believe he had been reduced to following his own wife. But the only thing that mattered to him now was uncovering the truth, no matter how painful it would be. When I entered the cafe, my heart was racing. Everything around me felt surreal. The people, the tables, the conversations. I had no idea what awaited me, but the excitement surged through me. As I approached the front desk, a waiter came up to me and politely asked, "Are you here to see Mr. Hunter?" I nodded nervously, unable to speak. The waiter smiled slightly and gestured for me to follow him. He led me through the cafe into a more secluded area where the private rooms were located. Each of my steps seemed too loud, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was doing something forbidden. When we reached one of the doors, the waiter opened it and nodded for me to enter. "He's waiting for you inside." I took a deep breath and stepped in. The room was cozy, dimly lit, and nothing like the typical cafe atmosphere. At the table sat a man, his face obscured by the soft shadows cast by the lamps. My mind didn't immediately process what was happening. I had expected to see a complete stranger, but as he lifted his head, reality hit me like a shockwave. Sitting before me wasn't just anyone, it was Dylan, Sam's nephew. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't understand what was going on. I stared at him, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. Dylan was the same Hunter with whom I had spent hours, days in the virtual world? But how? Why him? Without giving me time to react, Dylan started speaking. "You're shocked, I'm sure," he said with a slight smile. "I knew you'd have this reaction." "How?" I whispered, unable to believe my eyes. "You... Hunter?" He nodded. "Yes, I've known who you were from the beginning. I used the game to get closer to you," Dylan admitted, not taking his eyes off me. "I've had feelings for you for a long time, Julia. The game was my chance to show you who I really am. I couldn't speak. Everything I knew about Hunter, the person I had shared my thoughts, dreams, and desires with, it all crumbled in an instant. It was Dylan, and he had known all along." "You felt it too, didn't you?" His voice was soft but full of certainty. "You knew there was something between us, and it wasn't just a game. My thoughts were in chaos. How had I not realized it? Why didn't I see it? And most importantly, what was I going to do now? The world around me felt surreal, as if I were in a dream. Dylan. It had been Dylan all along. Hunter, the person who had given me the emotions and feelings I hadn't experienced in so long, turned out to be my relative by marriage. I stood before him, still trying to process what was happening, unable to find the strength to speak. My mind was in turmoil. This was the person I had been drawn to in the game, but now, in reality, the situation felt entirely different, too complicated, too wrong. I felt a part of me screaming that I needed to stop, that this was a mistake. But at the same time, another part of me wanted to continue, wanted the feelings that had ignited within me to last. As I stood there, frozen, Dylan stepped closer. I could see his face, his confidence, his desire. He knew that there was something more between us than just a virtual connection. His eyes were full of determination, and in a moment of weakness, I gave in to that look. Before I could think, he was right in front of me, and before I knew it, my lips met his. My mind resisted, screamed that this was wrong. But the passion that had built up during all that time spent with Hunter in the game overwhelmed me. I felt the fire inside me that I had been suppressing for so long ignite once more. It was a step I should never have taken, but I couldn't stop myself now. When Dylan pulled away, his breathing was uneven, but he didn't let go of me. He looked into my eyes and quietly said, "Why don't we repeat here what we did in the game?" I froze, my thoughts battling within me once again. This was the moment when I could have walked away, said no, and ended it. But my emotions were so strong that I could no longer resist. All the moral boundaries I had set for myself were shattered by the same passions I had felt for him in the virtual world. Dylan moved even closer, his arms wrapping around me, and I gave in to the feeling. My logic, my common sense, everything was drowned out by the force of the desire that consumed me. We crossed the line, one I never thought I would ever cross. In that secluded room where no one could see us, we allowed our passions to take over completely. It was like the game, but now reality felt even more vivid, and the emotions I had suppressed erupted with a newfound intensity. But even as I indulged in the moment, I knew deep down that this was wrong. It broke every moral code, every boundary, but I couldn't stop anymore. We had crossed the line, and now there was no turning back. The moment the private room door opened and I saw the shadow of the waiter, reality came crashing down. Just a moment ago, I had been lost in what was happening between Dylan and me. But now everything shattered. The waiter, noticing us in a compromising position, quickly shut the door, his face twisted in shock. He clearly hadn't expected to see something like this. A cold fear ran through me. Dylan and I wordlessly began fixing ourselves, not daring to speak. The tension in the room was thick with the realization that this brief moment of calm was over. Suddenly, I heard commotion outside. The waiter was speaking to someone, and that voice, I would recognize it anywhere, Sam. He was demanding to check all the private rooms. I didn't have time to think before the door flew open, and there stood Sam, his eyes blazing with fury. The waiter tried to hold him back, but Sam shoved him aside. My heart stopped. Sam's gaze pierced through me like a knife. He saw us, Dylan and me, still trying to straighten ourselves out. Confusion turned into rage, and the air in the room felt even heavier. "You!" Sam pointed at Dylan, his voice shaking with anger. "How could you? You've destroyed everything." Dylan remained silent, his face cold as if none of this concerned him. But Sam was in a state of such fury that nothing could stop him. "You betrayed me!" Sam shouted, turning toward me. "How could you? Say something. Explain. Why?" I stood frozen, unable to speak. Words caught in my throat, and I couldn't force anything out. I watched as Sam stepped closer, his face twisted with pain and hatred. He was on the edge. His fists were clenched, and his breathing grew rapid. The waiter intervened again, trying to stop Sam before things escalated into a full-blown fight. "Sir, please." The waiter's voice was quiet but firm. "This isn't the place for this." Sam paused, but he wasn't calm. "You betrayed me," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Everything we had. This is the end." He shot a quick, cold glance at Dylan, his face filled with contempt. "I'll ruin your life however I can," Sam said. "You have no idea what I'm going to do to you." I tried to say something to stop him, but Sam wasn't listening to me anymore. In his eyes, I no longer existed. This was the end of everything we had built. Without another word, Sam turned and stormed out of the room, leaving me standing in the very spot where, just moments ago, I thought I was on the verge of something new. Now, everything was in ruins. After Sam stormed out of that private room, I couldn't recover from the shock for a long time. I had seen his eyes filled with rage and pain, and I knew nothing good would come of this. But what worried me even more was that this wasn't just my disaster. Dylan had also been caught in the whirlwind of this destructive storm. The next day, everything began to unfold rapidly. Dylan worked at Sam's company, and that was the first target. Sam wasn't going to waste any time or hesitate in his decision. He called Dylan into the office, and within minutes, Dylan's career was over. Sam fired him from his position without a second thought. And it wasn't just a dismissal. It was the beginning of Dylan's downfall. The company where Dylan worked wasn't just a place where he earned a paycheck. It was an opportunity for growth, a chance to build a future that was now shattered. Sam had stripped him of all his prospects. No one dared to challenge Sam. In their eyes, this was a just punishment for betrayal. But that wasn't enough. Sam decided to isolate Dylan completely from the family as well. He sent messages to Dylan's parents and relatives explaining in detail what had happened. This news shocked and disgusted Dylan's family. His parents were devastated and couldn't believe their son was capable of such a thing. For them, it was a blow to their reputation, and they quickly made the decision to cut him off to protect their own standing and avoid further gossip. From then on, all family gatherings were held without Dylan. He was forbidden from attending any family events, reunions, or even holiday celebrations. He was isolated both professionally and personally. Everything he had was destroyed within days. Dylan was trapped. He had nowhere to turn. He had lost his job, his family's trust, and all because of what had happened between us. I knew this wouldn't stop there. Sam was determined to ruin Dylan completely, and everything he did only confirmed that. Now Dylan was alone. Everything that had once made up his life was gone. I saw how the man who had once been so confident in himself and his actions was now left in complete isolation and despair. It had been several days since everything fell apart. I had been avoiding talking to Dylan, trying to process what had happened. Guilt and regret consumed me. I couldn't believe I had allowed my emotions to take control of me so much that I forgot everything. About Sam, our life, and who I was. Now, as the consequences unfolded, I felt cornered. Dylan, on the other hand, couldn't just disappear. I knew his life had been destroyed as much as mine. Everything he knew, everything he had been working toward, his job, his family, had all been taken from him. And now he wanted to talk. One evening, as I sat at home, there was an unexpected knock at the door. It was Dylan. His face looked tired, his eyes dark from sleepless nights. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't ready to talk, but as if reading my mind, he started right away. "I've lost everything, Julia, because of this, because of us." His voice was quiet, full of pain. "I know that what happened between us didn't just destroy your marriage. It destroyed my life, too. I lost my job. My family has turned their backs on me. There's nothing I can get back." I listened to him, and bitterness rose up inside me again. He continued, "But my feelings for you were real. I can't deny that they were genuine. I was looking for something in you that was missing in my life, and I thought I found it." I stayed silent. My thoughts were swirling. I, too, thought I had found something in him. Something that I believed would bring back the passion that had been absent from my life for so long. But now, looking at him, I realized just how naive I had been. "But now I've lost everything," he finished. "And I don't know what to do anymore." I sighed, feeling the weight of guilt intensify inside me. I saw before me a man who was suffering from the same mistakes I had made. But I couldn't justify my actions. Everything I had done was the result of my immature decisions. I had acted like a teenager, giving in to impulses, forgetting that those impulses came with consequences. "Dylan," I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I made a mistake, too. I thought you and the game were a way to escape my problems. But I didn't realize that all of this was just an illusion. We both made choices that destroyed the lives around us." I saw his shoulders slump. He looked as lost as I was. We had both fallen into the trap of our emotions, and now we were both paying the heavy price for it. "I regret giving in to my feelings," I continued. "We shouldn't have let this happen. I acted like an immature person, and now everything I had is ruined." Dylan looked at me, and in his eyes was desperation. He understood that there was nothing left between us, and that the consequences of our actions were unavoidable. Every new day brought with it a growing realization that my life was completely shattered. I sat alone, surrounded by silence, and only now was I beginning to understand the true magnitude of what had happened. My online relationship with Hunter, my virtual passions, it had all been an illusion that swept away my real life. And now I was facing the results of my actions. My real life no longer existed as it once did. I couldn't shake the overwhelming guilt I felt toward Sam. Our marriage, our life together, it had all vanished as if it had never existed. How could I have allowed myself to forget so easily what was truly important? Sam had been there all those years, yet I traded that for pixels, for the illusory excitement of connecting with someone I never really knew. Dylan was just a reflection of what I wanted to see. I had created him in my mind, idealized him, giving him qualities he didn't possess. Everything that happened between us in the virtual world turned out to be nothing more than a mirage. I had been desperately searching for something new that was missing in my life with Sam, and I found it in the game. But now I realized that the game was just a way to escape my real problems, not a solution. This realization hit me hard. I understood that Dylan had never been the person I imagined him to be. He was just another person like me, trying to find something he was missing. But that didn't make our actions any less destructive. I couldn't live in this illusory world any longer. I picked up my phone and sent Dylan a short message. "We need to end this. I can't keep doing this." I sent it without waiting for a response. Then I logged into the game and without hesitation deleted my account. It was my first step towards severing all ties with this world, with this false reality that had only brought pain. But even that couldn't fix what had already been done. My marriage was ruined, and deleting the game couldn't change that. It was over. Sam would never look at me the same way again. I had destroyed not only our relationship, but also my life. With that realization came a deep emptiness. I understood that there was no going back. I couldn't fix what had been done. I couldn't bring Sam back, couldn't restore the life I had taken for granted. Now, all that lay before me was a future that terrified me with its uncertainty. When Sam filed for divorce, I knew it was the end. There were no conversations about a second chance, no attempts to work things out. He simply didn't see the point anymore. I could see the pain and disappointment etched on his face. His trust had been completely shattered, and no amount of apologies or explanations could bring back what I had destroyed. The day he packed his things and left the house was a moment I would never forget. Sam didn't say any unnecessary words. He was silent, almost cold. Every action he took was deliberate and confident, as if he had long ago made up his mind. He cast one last glance at the house, the one we had built together, the one where we had spent so many years. That look wasn't filled with anger, but rather something resembling weary acceptance that everything had fallen apart. I watched him leave, realizing that I was now truly alone. The family that had once been my foundation was gone, all because of me. My life had become an empty shell. My heart ached, but it was a pain I deserved. Everything I had done in the virtual world now had real-life consequences, and they were devastating. After Sam left, I tried to figure out what was next, but my attempts to find some stability were interrupted by Dylan. He kept trying to reconnect with me despite everything that had happened. His calls, his messages, his attempts to meet, they didn't stop. Dylan didn't understand that everything had changed and that there could no longer be any future for us. Every time he called, I felt a wave of irritation rising inside me. His attempts to get closer seemed ridiculous and unnecessary. Now I saw him for what he truly was, someone I had used to satisfy my own illusions. All his promises and confessions felt empty. I decided to cut him off completely. One of his calls became the last. "Dylan, enough," I said, almost shouting into the phone. "There's nothing between us anymore. You were just an illusion I created. It's over. Stop calling me." He tried to say something, but I wasn't listening anymore. I hung up, feeling a sense of control finally returning. I couldn't bring Sam back, but at least I could end this destructive cycle with Dylan. At last, I realized that I was alone. I had destroyed everything that mattered in my life, and now all that remained was emptiness. But in that emptiness, there was something new, the beginning of what could be a chance for rebirth, even if it had to come through pain. After Sam left, life felt empty. Each day passed as if in a daze. My reality had turned into a monotonous existence where there was neither joy nor pain, only the understanding that I had lost everything I had. But one day I realized that despite everything, I had to find a way to move forward. It wasn't easy. Every step forward was accompanied by thoughts of what I had done. I had destroyed my own life, giving in to illusory emotions that tore me away from the real world. And now, with the game that had once given me a sense of freedom and passion no longer part of my life, I felt exposed and vulnerable to reality. I knew that if I wanted to move on, I had to start with a clean slate. I needed to free myself from the addiction to virtual emotions that had destroyed me. This realization didn't come easily. I understood that every time I felt the urge to dive back into that illusion, it was an escape from reality. And I couldn't run anymore. There were moments when weakness got the better of me. One day I sat at my computer, once again thinking about how easy it would be to return to the game, where I could forget everything happening in real life. I opened my browser, navigated to the site where I could download the game. My heart was racing, and that familiar feeling from the days when I first started playing began to rise inside me. It felt like an addiction, the immediate desire to escape the pain and the problems. But at the last moment, I stopped. My fingers hovered over the download button, but something inside me resisted. I remembered how much pain it had caused me, how I lost Sam, my life, and myself. I couldn't dive back into the world that had destroyed everything. I closed the site, exhaled, and realized it was the right decision. It was my first real achievement in a long time. I understood that I could control my actions, even if it was difficult. I knew that a long road lay ahead. My future was still uncertain, but I no longer wanted to run. I had to face it. Every day now was a small step toward recovery. I no longer sought solace in illusions. I tried to find it in real life, no matter how difficult it was. Even though I no longer had a family, even though I had lost so much, I still had the chance to start again. And while I didn't know what lay ahead, I knew one thing for sure. I was done running from my mistakes. Now, I was ready to face whatever life would bring and do everything possible to avoid making the same ones again. My decision to leave the city had been growing inside me for some time. I knew that if I stayed here, surrounded by familiar places and memories, I would never truly be able to start anew. Everything around me reminded me of the past, of Sam, of our years together, of how I had destroyed it all. I needed a fresh space, a place where I could leave my mistakes behind and try to rebuild my life from scratch. Moving was not an easy step. I packed up all my belongings, taking only the essentials, and headed to a city I didn't know. At some point, I realized that this new city symbolized a chance for me to rediscover myself. Here, no one knew my past. No one would judge me for my mistakes. It was a place where I could truly begin living again without looking back. I felt the weight of the past slowly fading away. My life was still incomplete, but I no longer felt the need to escape into a virtual reality. Now I sought comfort in simple things, walking through the streets of this new city, encountering strangers, and having the chance to start over with a blank slate. It was difficult, but I knew it was the only path that could lead me toward healing. My future remained uncertain. I didn't know what awaited me, and that scared me. But at the same time, I felt that for the first time in a long while, I was ready to face that uncertainty. I was no longer running from my mistakes, no longer hiding in illusions. Now I was ready to face life as it truly was, real, unpredictable, and full of the unknown. My past would always stay with me, but it would no longer define my future. Now I could move forward, despite the fear and uncertainty. This was a new stage in my life, full of possibilities. And although I didn't know where this path would lead me, I finally felt the strength to keep going. My life was no longer dictated by virtual reality. I no longer sought solace in illusions. Now I was ready to live in the real world, accepting it for what it was, with all its challenges and joys. My new life was just beginning, and whatever awaited me in the future, I was ready to face it with my head held high.